Hey y'all, welcome to the second episode of Clitoral Conflabs. Quick note here that I recorded the next 3 episodes originally thinking they were going to be one longer episode. And since then, I've decided that I will be releasing each of these blocks individually, which means I will be putting out shorter Clitoral Conflab episodes just more frequently. So please keep that in mind when the next 3 episodes seem to have a little lack of intro. We're still trying things around here and seeing what works. So thank you for your patience, and I'm so glad you're here. Hey there, and welcome to the second episode of Clitoral Conflabs. I'm Meredith, and I am coming to you from California. I'm recording this first block of this episode, May 5th of 2026. Honestly, I'm still feeling deep grief and rage over the Supreme Court gutting Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, but we have things to do and we need to get busy because we are going to fight back and it will make a difference. These bastards will not win. Now, I want to begin this episode by laying out the vision that I have for the Agentic Feminine and then describing one of the biggest influences for my current, yet, yes, always evolving sociopolitical position, and finishing with an explanation for why the Agentic Feminine is not, at least at this point, a co-ed institution, despite the fact that, yes, we do need men to participate in movement making if we want to fundamentally change the way our society works. All right, I started off my late college, early professional career as an international geopolitical analyst and then basically switched my focus to domestic bipartisan politics. And so I've been on a search for decades to understand what makes up what constitutes a thriving and successful society. But that's only part of the story. The Agentic Feminine was born of 3 things. Number 1, me realizing U.S. domestic bipartisan politics was making me homicidal. Now, it is a fundamental part of the strategy to building progress in the U.S. We have no choice. We must fully engage with electoral politics from the smallest, teeniest election to the biggest. We've got to be on the front lines. We've got to be in it. But it can be grueling, excruciating, and a fully counterproductive circle jerk. I realized I had to go upstream of the 2-party electoral system with my very specific skill set and driving passion if I was ever going to be instrumental in creating change. Because the bottom line is that politics is downstream from culture. So if we're not trying to change culture, we're just spitting into the wind. The second fundamental driver for my building the Agentic Feminine is the understanding that white women in particular are the linchpin of white supremacist patriarchy, and that it was my responsibility and that of other white women to get after it and change it. That I had a particular vantage point with my background in a large conservative Southern extended family and having lived in conservative areas the vast majority of my life, partnered with my academic and professional background. In many ways, I was built for this. And for real, I've recently gotten into astrology and my birth chart confirms everything. Everything. Seriously, y'all, it is laid out brick by brick. And lastly, coming to the understanding that my life was always going to be a brutally bleak struggle as long as I stayed in my marriage. That realization mandated I go on one of those post-40 apocalyptic expeditions of self-discovery that many women go on because we're dying inside. My odyssey brought me to a horizon where it was all laid out surgically and strategically how patriarchy played out in my life and that of all women's lives, and that it was so much worse for Black women and women of color. I had my holy fuck moment, and that was the point of no return. That neoliberal capitalist white supremacist patriarchy was the driving force behind the genocidal trash fire that is the U.S. modus operandi, as we have seen directly and openly in recent years. They're not hiding it anymore. It is a failed societal construct, and it is dragging humanity kicking and screaming toward a species-level extinction event. Women, Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, LGBTQIA, and disabled people have always been and continue to be sidelined, ridiculed, manipulated, marginalized, under-resourced, and have had the worst horrors humanity is capable of visited upon them in an effort by those in power to steal and hoard resources. I mean, the Met Gala was last night, for Christ's sake. Y'all see that? Anyway, furthermore, The desperate self-abandonment women, girls, and those socialized as female are conditioned to endure in order to function and survive is a global atrocity spanning millennia. Now that my kids are reaching higher levels of self-sufficiency, thank Goddess in the sky, oh my God, it is time for me to join with those envisioning a better tomorrow and doing the work of making it happen. I'm just done simply and singularly trying to fix how we exist in this current system, or even just trying to help make it easier to navigate. Hell, after the ravages of right-wing extremism have delivered us the greatest existential threat to the US and everyone in it in the form of Trump, there's no choice but to tear down and rebuild. Now, do not misinterpret what I'm saying. I am not saying harm reduction and the navigation of a system hell-bent on your destruction are not valid strategies. Yes, they are imperative. We do exist inside these systems, some of us with more privilege than others, and we do need to know better how to survive and strengthen ourselves in them and help those who have been particularly targeted by the current regime. That is a necessary part of helping women access resources and power in a white supremacist patriarchy. But that isn't only my purpose or my work. My responsibility is to all women to participate in the establishing of new systems that are not hierarchical, oppressive, exploitative, extractive, and cruel. To begin to deeply and fully understand what it takes to build a thriving society and to bring that philosophy to the broader culture, especially here in the US. To sow the seeds, carry the message, prepare the ground, create the space, and build the infrastructure for those doing the work and the leaders answering the call to build a better future. Now, it is very clear and very obvious to anyone paying attention, but especially women, that we must change the way we build and prioritize socio-political and socioeconomic structures. But in order to fuck, smash, or destroy the patriarchy, we need to understand what it is exactly, and white toxic narcissism, and specifically identify the ways in which patriarchy and whiteness dictate the function and purpose of all the civic, social, public, and private structures, which ones we prioritize, where and to whom we allocate resources and power, and the metric for measuring success. Because patriarchy is not inevitable. It's not natural, biological, functional, successful, mandatory, or a necessity. It is none of these things. And it's time it was over. It's long been time. It should never have been a thing. And now it needs to be a relic of the past. Furthermore, we also need to understand matriarchy. To be clear, that isn't just a bunch of women getting together and ruling and stealing everything. It isn't a mirror image of patriarchy. It is a way of organizing the function of a society according to a specific set of values. It is an operating system. We are going to learn about it from those who have come before us, understand it, and see how we can implement these values and frameworks. Now, y'all know it, but simply because a woman is a woman, that doesn't make them matriarchal. In fact, I would say most women, especially most white women, are patriarchal to a very unhealthy extent. And yes, it's a spectrum, but it's time the word matriarchy and many of the systems of matriarchy become mainstream. That means understanding the historical record as well as we can without letting it slow us down during this time of massive upheaval, rampant corruption, criminality, and military and societal violence by state leaders. Matriarchy has a lineage that goes back through human history, spanning the globe. It far predates patriarchy and served the interests of human progress far longer. Now, under patriarchy, we're facing the very real possibility of extinction or a dystopian event that does push us back into agrarian society. And these are issues and possibilities that we need to explore. So it's very encouraging that the idea of matriarchy is experiencing a resurgence among women, specifically on social media, but in the broader zeitgeist, especially considering current events, and maybe because of the current events that are happening. A great read on patriarchy and matriarchy is the book, The Patriarchs, Origins of Inequality by Angela Saini. I'll put a link to the book as well as some other sources, including a podcast interview the author did in the show notes. I want to say a lot of women are doing this and have been doing this. My goal is that TAF, or the Agentic Feminine, helps strengthen these efforts to understand matriarchy historically and then decide which lessons we want to incorporate in the building of new structures and which lessons we want to leave behind to history. While so many feminist, and matriarchal organizations have done amazing work to get to a point where we functionally have agency in building new socio-political and socioeconomic structures, too many of them, specifically white liberal feminist organizations, operated under a patriarchal framework with the overall goal of simply gaining power and access to resources inside the male domination hierarchy, without fundamentally changing the infrastructure to include all women, especially Indigenous and Black women, from whom white women have appropriated lessons, wisdom, and direction. Furthermore, from my vantage point, a lot of these organizations and institutions did not adequately address the different lived experiences of women and people socialized as female from different backgrounds and origins. This included disregarding the intersectionality of women and race, a reality explained by American legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw, who just so happens to have a memoir out today, happy publishing day, called Backtalker, which I'm really anxious to dive into. The whitewashing of women's rights and liberties also excluded Indigenous women and populations whose power-sharing frameworks informed the philosophies of the early women's movements. I mean, give me a fucking break, you know? That will not happen here. At the Agentic Feminine, we will be very upfront, open, and honest in addressing how women are treated differently according to their race, a manufactured construct of whiteness, as well as their sexuality, conventional attractiveness, physical ability, socioeconomic status, and more. They really want to divide and conquer us, y'all. We will always proceed here at TAF, bearing in mind the vast interconnectedness of capitalism, white supremacy, anti-Blackness, and patriarchy. And of course, okay, when I say we, I mean me right now, because right now I am a party of one, but hopefully TAF will grow and there will be a we very soon. Now, a lot of women have been doing this work far longer than I've even thought about it or even been alive. And so much of my work will simply be creating space and helping prepare the ground for them to have broader reach, identifying and supporting the women leading, teaching, doing the work, and succeeding at it, publicizing them, lifting them up, increasing their platform, brightening their spotlight, and growing their support. Also, at TAF, we will be giving women greater access to resources, understanding, and knowledge about the best ways to build sociopolitical and socioeconomic infrastructure, including families, from a more matriarchal standpoint that prioritize caregiving and honoring the divine spirit and wisdom of each individual woman. Seriously, it is hard for me to articulate just how big and effective I see this becoming. Now, if you visit the Agentic Feminine website, there is a page where I list the principles and priorities I have mapped out for the organization moving forward. The first principle is that all humans have a birthright to live their authentic humanity free from harm and harassment. Following that, I have outlined the 4 different main components that will comprise the Agentic Feminine. And you can visit the website to read about all of them in depth, but I'm going to go ahead and offer a cursory description here so you get the idea. Potentially, the most important component, although they're all extremely powerful in their possibility, is the library of resources for rewilding women. Women need open, non-gate-kept, non-monetized access to basic information on a massively broad spectrum of topics relative to their survival, their thriving, and that of their children and their communities around them. Part of the work the Agentic Feminine will do is build what I refer to as a grand database to empower women with the tools they need to individually and collectively rewild and rewire to build new ways of being we all deserve. Next, TAF will establish an art and media conglomerate, of which Clitoral Conflabs is a foundational step, to produce, fund, uplift, and magnify art and media focused on the rewilding of women, changing culture to establish communal, generous, life-affirming matriarchal norms on a widespread basis, as well as the proactive destruction of oppressive power systems. How do we destroy oppressive power systems and build new ones? That's the third component of the Agentic Feminine. The socio-political and socioeconomic think tank will be focused on cohesion and connection among the disparate elements of intersectional feminist organizations working for change. We will help outline and implement strategy direct funds, and create avenues for greater, deeper structural change. Always, always with the understanding of Black and Indigenous history in the U.S., including the most recent vicious attacks on Indigenous citizenship and on Black electoral and professional power, specifically targeting Black women by the current regime, ballroom-obsessed, pedophilia-supporting, corrupt, racist idiots running the federal government. Not to be too upset about it. Furthermore, we hold white women in particular have the responsibility to break capitalist, white supremacist patriarchy and work to build new mutually beneficial systems. And lastly, something I really believe in and I've tried twice and failed to get it off the ground is establishing an online township for women. It hasn't worked yet. I don't know that I have earned enough trust for it to take root, but I'm committed to building it. I do think women need a closed online community to meet each other, build bonds and connections, support networks, share kindred energy to build strength, joy, and power. We need to heal with each other, specifically divorced and single moms, and find solutions and alleviate suffering through our connections. So I'm envisioning a place where women can find women-owned and hopefully matriarchal-run economic, educational, financial, medical, professional, agricultural, recreational, spiritual, women or family or children-centered places to turn to as they go about doing the work of improving their lives and those of the broader community. Also, we are severely lacking in deeply rooted organizations for women that are not religious institutions, which I have seen time and time again be sought after by recently divorced women needing community only to experience exploitation for their unpaid labor. Women in need should easily have access to a supportive place to land when escaping harmful situations. We all have a place in this space, and I want to make sure that women can find their rhythm and thrive. At this point, my priority is getting this podcast established, but we have a lot on the horizon, and I am so grateful for the opportunity to do this work that I feel called to do on a deeply spiritual, molecular level. My compulsion to do this work is relentless and indescribable, regardless of what's happening in my private life, and a lot is happening in my private life. More on that later. Okay, everyone, thanks for listening, and I will see you soon.